All right, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started here. Today is our True Forming Back Made Easy webinar. First and foremost, if you all joined us on this webinar last year, it'll look pretty familiar. I'm going to highlight some of the new additions and changes since that time I presented from last year. But otherwise, in this particular webinar, we're going to try and simplify what at times can seem like a bit of an overwhelming or complicated product here. So before I do that, though, I want to do a couple little housekeeping things. So first off, I'm going to be recording this webinar. I'll make this recording available after we wrap up. It will eventually make it onto our YouTube page, and you can get to that from our website as well. So that'll be something you can access and review freely as you need. Usually that takes a week or so to get to our YouTube page. If you have any questions as I'm going through, please feel free to drop it into the Q&A, drop it into the chat. My best to get you. If there's anything we leave unanswered by the end of this webinar, we'll definitely follow up directly with you as soon as we can get a hold of that answer. All of the slides, the recording, everything, I'll make sure to email that out to you guys within the next 24 hours. Should get it out to you today. And any handouts we might have that goes along with this, I'll share that as well. And then the very last thing here is if you are new to Teams webinars, this is an international audience. If you're new to Teams and English is not necessarily your first language, you have a button on your toolbar at the top that says More. If you click on that, there's an option there that you can translate the text that you see on the slides into a handful of common languages. So feel free to do that. So I'll go ahead and get started here. We're going to go through a few different topics. I'm going to try and give you just a quick broad what is TFB. Talk to you about some things that are unique to TFB, and then I'll get into the specifics there. So Stealth's True Forming Back, or TFB Back, is our custom back support line. We've really tried to focus the design on giving something that's super easy to use, but still stays functional, and most importantly, is something that is going to offer extreme configurability for each specific client. So we'll start with that client's unique dimensions, and then configure that back to meet their exact needs. So we use a couple of different exclusive materials that we're going to dive into here in a couple of minutes, and really focus on those materials because they give us the ability to really enhance the comfort, improve sitting tolerance, and manage climate and things like that. So back in the day, if you knew much about Stealth, you'll know that we have a history in custom seating from plywood stuff. So we do things a little differently from our days of plywood-based custom seating. This current generation of custom seating, we use prefabricated components and generate a custom outcome. So we're still cutting every single TFB shell per order, but some of the smaller parts, for example, are prefabricated to some degree. So that means some of the parts and pieces we might need for the more common modifications are maybe already prefabbed, they're already preformed, sitting on a shelf and ready to use with it minimal additional work. So an example of that is when we get into the TFB linear stuff, we'll talk about a curve by foam, which is a wedge-shaped piece of foam. We already have those wedges cut and sitting on the shelf, so then when we put it on your specific TFB, rather than shaping an entire wedge, we just make a couple of cuts to fit that particular shell, and we're done with it. So what that lets us do is we really take that, what may have been 10 minutes of work, 20 minutes of work to create a wedge that's now the right length. It turns it into a 30-second job for that operator. So this really helps us keep our lead times to a minimum by using these semi-prefabbed components. Our target is normally in the neighborhood of 5 days from order conversion to shipping, and right now we're right in that ballpark. So some days we are hovering a bit under, some days we're a bit over, but that 5 days from conversion to shipping is about where we sit at any given point in time. Now, as I go through here, I'm going to talk about a lot of modifications, and what I want you all to understand right off the bat is those modifications are what we know we can make within that 5 day lead time. Anything that falls outside of that, we'll absolutely try to do for you guys. So if you need a modification, a custom shape on your back support, a custom piece of foam, whatever it may be, by all means ask us. We're going to do our best to make that happen for you, but that may push your timeline to more like a 7 to 10 day time frame. So this newer streamlined design that we have now, it really also helps us minimize additional hardware, and I'll talk about that as well. Makes it easy to mount and stuff like that, and gives us a very lightweight solution that performs pretty well. So let's actually get into the meat of it here. Why would I start with a custom back instead of just an off-the-shelf conventional back support? We often find that conventional mass-produced back supports, they don't fit clients' needs. It might be because of something as simple as just an asymmetric posture, right? It could be that client, maybe they have a non-standard size, right? It's just an oddball size that's not stocked on anybody's one particular shelf. So pediatric clients might just be too small for a standard back support, and so that in itself might be the reason you go to a custom, or that same pediatric client might need something that can accommodate for the extreme amount of growth that pediatric client is going to experience over the life of the product. So we have some unique needs for pressure management that we can deal with, things like that, but maybe they have a body shape that's out of the ordinary and needs something specifically shaped and contoured around them with unique foam layering densities, right? So I think sometimes, especially when you're new to custom seating, the thing that jumps up to the front of your mind often is that custom seating is really your last resort kind of thing, and it's not always going to be that complicated. Like I said earlier, it could be as simple as they just have a non-standard size that they need. So don't always think of it as super complex involved. It's just it could be a whole host of reasons for going custom. Now, the TFB system comes in 3 distinct styles. I'll try and break these down as we go through here, but linear, contour, and flex. Each of these are really designed for a specific set of client needs and requirements, and I'll go through in detail as we get through this and explore the differences between those 3 styles. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about some of the materials we've chosen to use on TFB and kind of why we use those and what benefits they might have for your clients. So first up is we do use an aluminum base for all of our TFB backs, our true forming backs. Aluminum that we use, it's been stabilized and things. It's a very hard and durable aluminum alloy. So with aluminum, we can control the weight quite a bit better than with plywood, as well as the appearance, right? We can carve out designs and stuff like that look nice. But the big reason we do this is weight reduction. We can also, instead of having to bolt on external tracks and things just to mount hardware, we reduce extra pieces, right? So I'll show you how we do that as we go through, but that also lets us cut down on the weight overall. But we do cut, we do bend, we do powder coat every single one of these backs per order. So aluminum is easier for us to work with and keep within that time frame as well. We are just now better set up as a machine shop for aluminum. So as we look at these, I'll kind of explain some of those things in more detail. But as a whole, we have a kind of this generic design. Each TFB more or less kind of has these cutouts on them, And that material, to start with, aluminum's already kind of lighter than plywood to get the same strength we're looking for. But we also remove a bunch of material, which the main goal there again is weight reduction for that final product. But those cutouts also give you a spot where you can get in, you can kind of get a finger or two in there and feel for pressure and feel for contact and check that you've got that client sitting how they need without necessarily having to push the client forward to check for that stuff like you might when that is a fully closed off back support. Now, cool core, if you guys have dealt with stealth over the last 5 or more years, you'll know cool core, but I'll go ahead and talk to you guys about it. It's something we use and highlight here on our RTFB line. In retail space outside of cool core, outside of stealth, cool core is pretty well commonly used in sporting good industries, athletic apparel, stuff like that. So we use cool core here in our industry as a cover material. It feels very, very similar to that super stretchy material that you might find in workout pants, yoga pants, things like that. For us, it comes down to this fabric's ability to keep the skin drier and cooler, but also let the fabric stretch and the foam do its job. But basically here with this material, the moisture from that seated area, that sitting area, is wicked away from the skin into a hollow fiber. Air is moving through that, moves across, around through those fiber cores, and that's really going to help avoid those spots of moisture saturation. So you can get better moisture evaporation at a more constant rate with this material than some of the other ones that we've used before. Overall, it means that fabric will dry out much faster as well. It keeps that skin surface cooler, it keeps it drier and healthier. So wound prevention, if you ever deal with that, right, this helps us quite a bit for that. If you've ever stayed up too long, you look at fingers, wonder why they're all wrinkly, because they're saturated. So moisture that stays there too long, it becomes saturated, macerated, and that's kind of what's happening to our seated surfaces for a lot of our clients. If we don't have airflow in there, they're going to have an increase of sweat and heat buildup down there where they're contacting that system, leads to the breakdown of that like top layer of skin, fungal, bacterial issues, things like that. And so those are what we're trying to prevent. You guys all know that. So if we can keep that client, if we keep the moisture away from them, avoid the saturation, control the rate of evaporation a little bit better, keep them cooler and drier, we reduce all the risk of that wound development in the first place. And again, cool core is a very, very good 4-way stretch material. So you can actually get into that foam and get the immersion and let the foam do its job. So all of those carefully selected layers of foam we're about to talk about get to do the thing you chose them for if the cover is not blocking for that. So cool core, it tends to run about 10 degrees on average cooler than a traditional lycra material. So there's several versions of studies that have shown around a 10 degree. And then it's also chemical free. We don't add anything to get through our test requirements. So flammability, cytotoxicity, biocompatibility, all of that. We're not having to add in, say, a flame retardant chemical to get through that testing. So again, if I'm sitting on a contact material that has fewer chemicals in it, and I'm already at risk of skin issues, then this could help minimize those issues for us. As far as our cover, in addition to the cool core, we have Stealth Tech and we have Airflow Mesh. So our Stealth Tech is similar to like a reverse Dartex kind of material. It's a polyester fabric, gets coated with a polyurethane face on it. Waterproof. It is washable. And our current material has a 2-way stretch, so it's easy to clean. But the big thing to know for today's webinar is in the extremely near future, we will be moving from a 2-way stretch to a 4-way stretch material on our Stealth Tech. So that'll let you sink into that foam and get a better immersion and pressure distribution when we do make that change. So no specific date on that just yet, but it's going to be very, very soon. Now our airflow mesh kind of tries to do what CoolCore does, what I just spent two or 3 minutes talking about there. Right, we're trying to increase airflow and circulation, but you're going to have a more porous design that does that. So the fabric, because of that more porous design, does give you an increase in friction forces. Sometimes that's a problem. Sometimes it's a benefit because it can help keep our clients from sliding and put out of position. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at that cover material. We also have a neoprene that we're going to talk about here in the TFB line. The neoprene is more so for foam in place, and we'll chat more about that particular material here in a few minutes. All of the covers, we do have a non-contact material that we call a honeycomb material. And when you combine that with like the cushions and all of the secondary supports that we sell, you're going to have a system that performs and looks uniform from top to bottom. So all of our covers, they do include a privacy flap zipper on the bottom side for that TFB. So any TFB that you need to throw a privacy flap on, it's already ready for it. You don't need to add a zipper. You don't need to get a new cover or anything like that. It's just ready to go. And then monogramming is available for no charge. So we'll do monogramming in these 7 colors here. We try to keep it fair. We only use a block or script font. There's somewhat of a character limit, but we're flexible on that. So just know if you're putting like 62 characters in there, you're going to have something that's really hard to read, or you're going to have like multiple stacks of lines there to read. So just use some common sense there when you're choosing the word you're trying to put on there. And then the other quick note is a recent addition since our webinar from last year. We now offer a few different embroidery images in addition to just text like we just looked at. So these 19 images here, that's everything we do at the moment from these images. We're trying to just give you guys images to select from. So again, we can protect quality and lead time and stuff like that rather than doing any image under the sun. So these are fairly new additions to the product line. We are aware that we may want to change some of these images as we start seeing what people do and don't like of these. So if you come back in 6 months, we might have about the same number, but a couple of them might have been exchanged for a different image. But we'll run with these, see what we get. These are embroidered is the big thing to know. So there would be stitching on the front face. These are not like heat transfer or anything. Now, those same 7 colors that we can do the text in, our honeycomb non-contact material can come in that same color. So we've made sure those colors match. So if you did choose red monogramming with red honeycomb, that kiddo seating system wouldn't have 2 different colors that are clashing with each other. But it's mainly here focused on our pediatric stuff, but we can do this on an ETFP that you needed. The last exclusive material I'll talk about today before I dive into the actual back supports themselves is going to be Sunmate FRG. So FRG, part of that Sunmate stands for fire retardant graphite. So there's actually some small particles of graphite through there. I don't know how well you guys can see this over screens, but the little black speckles you see in there, that's your graphite. So that gives us a few unique characteristics. First off, this is still a viscoelastic memory foam. It's flexible, just like a standard Sunmate and everything. It's going to absorb vibrations and stuff like that. Just like your standard Sunmate, it's about, give or take a bit, 1/3 plant-based ingredients. But the graphite particles, they're going to do a few interesting things that you don't get in a standard Sunmate. So the First of all, the like performance of it, the ILD, or like the value of how much it squishes when you load it, it's going to be just a little bit more firm than your standard Sunmate. So what that lets us do is we've actually eliminated layers from other traditional builds. So when we might have needed 3 inches worth of foam to protect from bottoming out, we're very comfortably getting away with, say, 1.5 inches or 2 inches now, things like that. That graphite is also really good at protecting from the foam changing characteristics with temperature swing. So if I go outside in 115 degrees Fahrenheit and leave my cushion out in the car, it's not going to become incredibly soft right away. Same with going into extreme cold. So it'll withstand a very large temperature swing before the characteristics of that foam change. That's different than like a standard viscoelastic foam. If you get a standard viscoelastic foam, you leave it out in your car in the snow overnight, it's going to be a rock hard brick in the morning, right? So not necessarily going to be the case. It will still do that at a certain point, but your extreme temperatures that retain the normal characteristics are much, much bigger swing from top to bottom there. The other thing to note here is graphite and water. Graphite and water don't like each other. It tends to repel water. So this does not absorb water like a standard viscoelastic foam will. You can pour water on this thing. You can fully submerge it in 24 hours or so. It's only going to absorb about 1 to 3% of its total weight in that water. What that means is I can get sweaty and I can have spillage and things onto my back support, and the foam won't retain that moisture. It will shed off. So if I have a cover that does a good job of picking up, transporting heat and moisture specifically away, the foam is going to aid in that process. So the last quick thing to know about this is you can clean this foam fairly easily because it's not going to pick up and hold that stuff. So your other foams, sometimes it's hard to keep those things clean. FRG is a little easier to clean. So just a side note, outside of Stealth, Sunmate FRG specifically is used a lot in like boats and motorcycles and things like that. So in addition to FRG, we also offer a really high quality open cell foam. But to simplify the ordering process, we really only keep these to a 1/2 inch or 1 inch thickness. So we've built our system so that it looks like you can add 3 layers of foam and that's about it. You can add more than that. That will not be a problem. If you need more than just 3 layers of foam, you can add more and more middle layers, and just in the notes sections of the order form of the configurator, just tell us what order those middles need to be in. We also have Sunmate, just standard Sunmate, non-FRG, and an extra soft or extra soft. Now those, up until recently, we were only allowing on the contact face. You can do that in any layer now. And then one last quick thing that's new. Since that previous webinar, we've introduced a kyphosis modification. This mod takes those layers of foam you selected, and we're removing materials where you choose and how you choose, so that we can account for that kyphotic posture. So say we can remove the top section of foam or some of the top section of foam for an upper kyphotic posture. So these images here are just my very rough and ugly attempt at illustrating the position of those modification options. We also have a few different ways that you can tell us how to remove so that you get the client sitting against the layers in the stack of foam that you want them to. So we can remove the foam layer that goes against our base material. You can remove the one that's up against the contact layer, or you can just remove all of your middle layers of foam. So what you hopefully noticed there is you always preserve the foundation or base layer of foam and that contact layer of foam. So TFB, I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of different TFBs. All of those materials we just talked about are consistent across all TFBs. So let's talk about those three styles now. Again, we have linear, we have contour, and we have flex modifications. These are all a true forming back, which has just been modified into one of these three different shapes. So think of it in a similar manner. If you know ADI pretty well, you have like an ADI aluminum, you have a Q-back style, you have an aluminum flat top, all under that ADI name. So it's very similar idea here. As I go through each of these, remember again that I said earlier, if there's a rule that I state, if there's a modification I state, or something you don't hear me talk about that you use and need, we're always willing to consider those, right? This isn't to say that these are the only things we could ever do to the TFB. These are the ones that we can do and stay within our desired lead times. So TFB, rectangle, and I style here are our most linear style or planar style of TFB, so they often get lumped into the term TFB linear. They are a lightweight aluminum backrest. There's very minimal contouring on that outside edge. These are going to be the most similar to your more traditional plywood-based planar custom backs. The big advantage here is the massive weight reduction you get over a comparable build of plywood. It's super simple to configure versus some of the more traditional options of the same style. It typically is going to be more geared toward your pediatric side, though we still see plenty of utilization across all sizes of clients. This does not really accommodate for the shape of the spine much, but it does accommodate for that use of certain like spinal orthotics. It'll allow for growth when added support components are needed, which is more so why we see it used a lot in pediatrics. And it's available from a 10 by 10 up to 22 by 24 as that like within our standard lead times. We can definitely go outside of those restrictions if needed to some degree. We'll have some special considerations and upgrades we might need to do. But as it sits here, 250-pound capacity. So the like quick summary here is this style is really ideal for your clients who need something simple, adaptable, to serve as a foundation for room for growth, adding components. You're looking at clients whose main needs here are going to be, again, support and growth, accommodation, and flexibility in final configuration, right? Rather than that aggressive contouring or super precise spinal alignment and accommodation. So this is going to really work well when you need a planar surface that can interface cleanly with those other positioning strategies. So rectangle shells, here we have a lot going on. I kind of want to show you what's happening here on these backs. The whole set that's marked as A here, kind of the top center of the shell, those are through holes for your headrest mount. You've got down at the bottom center, you've got a set of holes for your seat to back hinge. But outside of that, you've got slots for mounting laterals, for mounting hardware. You've got slots for posture supports that you can either bolt the belt anchors straight to, or you could actually weave a 1-inch posture support directly into the shell if you were so inclined to do so. And then we have all of those cutouts there that help reduce the weight. So in theory, you shouldn't have to drill and cut onto this backrest for really any reason. Most everything you'll need for like 99% of the back should be here already. And again, if you already know, like I need to mount this thing on this back in this oddball location, we can give you those holes if we know it ahead of time. I-style is a very, very similar design to the rectangle shell. The most obvious reason here, the name I-style, we put an I notch into the shell. So it's meant to allow those thoracic laterals to be moved in more midline, closer to the client. Um, our eye notch here is typically going to be a fairly generic cut. It'll always be this width where it's right between your inner and outer slot. And it's always, I believe the number is about a 2/3 of the overall height. So you can define this cut if you need something incredibly precise. Otherwise, it'll look much like this, where it's a fairly generic shape of an eye notch. Now, the TFB linear series, we do this in a full width or a between the cane style, or drop in if you don't like between the canes, which is fairly common for this style of custom seating. So full width mounting here means that the whole backrest stays over the front of the canes. It allows for a little bit of a wider back in relation to the chair, to fit that frame. And it can protect that client from any contact with the canes. So you don't want to use this setup if the wheelchair frame width is maybe the same or potentially even narrower than the client's trunk width or total width. All full width backs here are true to size. So that means a 16 wide TFB would physically measure out exactly 16 wide. The hardware mounts to the inner track. You'll get a 90-degree bracket. Not something you guys need to memorize. We will keep track of that, but just know it's meant to go in that intersection. And between the canes on the right side here is a little bit narrower physically in relationship to the chair. Right, this gives you the ability to have some degree of recline past what the frame or the canes can do. You can move that back support rearward in relation to the canes, so you can fit between them and maximize seat depth. So when that client needs some kind of adjustment towards the back of the frame, this is a good option. So between the canes are physically 3 inches narrower than what we state. So a 16 wide would physically measure at 13 inches. You don't want to use this setup if the shoulders or any part of that client might rest on the frame. And to account for the growth or change in the size, here the hardware is now actually an angled bracket. So you have a 105-degree bracket instead of 90. That's going to mount to the outer side so that we can actually reach that 16 wide frame in that example. So now curved by foam. This is a modification that's unique to the rectangle and eye style TFB. This uses a piece of closed cell foam to create a little bit more contouring to the back, right? It goes from a 15-degree bend there. When you add the foam in there, your contact edge turns into a 40-degree bend, essentially. So we use closed cell foam. It's good for shock absorption and vibration dampening without much compression. So this modification just gives you a little more shape to otherwise a fairly flat back support, to help give you a little bit more support in upright sitting posture and a little bit more comfort for some clients. As a client rides around in their chair, their lumbar spine has a tendency to flatten out a couple of degrees, and so putting in a lumbar support insert can help with that. Our lumbar support inserts can give you a little bit more control to better match, that lumbar extension that somebody naturally has in their spinal curvature. But we have to be careful, right? We need a pelvic belt that's going to do its job, or the lumbar support's just going to kind of force somebody into posterior pelvic tilt. So we ship this in a separate bag so that you guys can place it in the field, and put it where the client needs it. We use a single size lumbar support regardless of the size of the backrest, so it's always these dimensions here. It's hard to make out in pictures and images, but it's a rounded curved face on there. Now, we also have a biangular modification in our linear backs. So this will allow the back basically to get split into an upper and lower section that's hinged. so that client spine can be aligned a little better. You improve their overall posture, increase contact with the back support, things like that. And so that set of hinges really extends that client's trunk while keeping the pelvis in a good neutral position. That's going to in turn lead to a bit more upright head positioning, easier balance of the head, things like that. You can use this modification to some degree to limit posterior pelvic tilts. For those with a bit more pronounced gluteal shelf, this might help better maximize pressure distribution. And we offer this in a 1 or 2 piece modification. So what you see here in this image is a 1-piece modification. It's a solid piece of cover and foam from top to bottom with 2 aluminum backs shell sections, right? A 2-piece modification would be the exact same thing, except we split the cover and foam at the same place we split the back support. It allows you to get more aggressive with opening that overall back from top to bottom. Since this does split the back support into 2 pieces, we do have some compatibility issues to keep in mind. Right, we can't do modification that's 7 inches up on a backrest that's only 10 inches tall. There are going to be issues there. So we do limit what we allow here and there, but if there's something outside of the typical normal options that you guys want, we'll certainly try to accommodate and make that happen when we can. But under normal circumstances, our order form and configurator kind of do limit your options there for that reason. Now, lateral wings or rectangle wings here, they're only available on the rectangle style back, and these are a hinged 2-piece lateral section of your back support. Once you tighten them all down, they are completely fixed. So these wings work very well to more so extend the contour and shape of the shell of the overall back support and give you a really supportive system. Those lateral extension wings, they're used to you can use them as lateral hip guides or trunk supports. As hip guides, if you were to place those lower ones, those lower section wings, and flare them outward instead of straight forward, they really are good at grabbing the top of the pelvis and keeping that in alignment as you transfer into backrest. As just a lateral support in general, you can use these as upper sections, lower sections, or both, like we have in this rendering. You can also mix and match these with more traditional thoracic lateral supports if you need a little bit more precise positioning, things like that, for more customized solutions here. You always have fabric over both faces of this to prevent any potential contact between the client and bare metal, and that fabric is going to match your contact fabric of your back support. These are available in 5 sizes as well, so we have extra small through extra large. Just like that biangle modification, we're going to limit what sizes of backs that you can use with each size of these wings. Back to that 10-inch tall example, if you were to throw 2 extra larges on top of each other there, those 2 wings stack up to be taller than the 10-inch back itself. So if we see something crazy here, we'll definitely give you a phone call and make sure that's what you wanted. Foam in place on the TFB linear and contour series that we're about to look at, we do offer liquid foam in place. So this is a liquid sunmate solution that once you mix all of these chemicals, it'll expand into your normal sunmate foam. So with TFB, what we're using this for typically is just to kind of fill the gaps and ensure the best pressure distribution that we possibly can. We're not asking to create full-blown custom molded seatings with this foam in place, things like that. We're just ensuring full contact with that back support and its foam. So in standard foam applications, when curved by foam, biangle mods, lumbar supports, the thoracic modification, things like that, when those aren't getting the job done, this foam in place is a great alternative for that. And you can use it in conjunction with any of those other modifications. So we do only offer this with the neoprene cover. I mentioned that earlier, but that's for a couple of reasons. First, this is a very easy product to create small voids and wrinkles during that molding process that could then be felt by that client. Start creating pressure points and things when you do that. And so there's also some heat that is created by the chemical reaction to create the foam from the liquid. So the challenge there is to keep the client still and in the correct position as that foam expands, but also not have them feel like that foam in place is getting too hot for them. So neoprene protects very well against both those issues. Our neoprene cover is also always going to have a 1/4-inch thick piece of sunmate sewn to the contact face as well, just to help mask any of the voids or accidental wrinkles you get in that process. We offer this in 2 versions. So we have to answer that question, usually the vendor is the one pouring the sunmate foam in place. So it would be done on delivery, but often a clinician is heavily involved in the process. So we offer this in 2 versions. Both are going to be the same material. They're equivalent to your normal sunmate foams. Once they're mixed and poured, you get the exact same thing in the end. But we have these available in half kit or full kits, and they both take around 5 minutes to set. So the first option we sell is the bowl method. So you get 3 individual containers of pre-measured ingredients. It's easy to see those ingredients before you pour it. As you're pouring, you'll know if they're good to go before you mix. You can tell if those chemicals have separated, things like that. You can also see inside of that bowl as you mix, which is nice. So you get a little stick here to mix with. Personally, I always take a paddle on a drill and mix with that instead. But you get to see what's happening, so you can tell when things are well mixed and when they're set for pouring and your clock is ticking, right? But it's super easy to get out of hand too. If you take that drill and mix and you accidentally lift your drill too high, you just flung expanding foam all over the place. So you can get into a mess in a hurry. The bag method has those exact same 3 chemical pre-measurements all in a foil laminate bag. So you mix it in the same order, but since it's self-contained, there's no need for mixing utensils or bowls or anything. You just knead it by hand, basically. Both of them, though, you can get out of hand if you're not careful. Once you mix that last chemical, a clock starts ticking, and you need to get that liquid poured before it begins expanding too much. If you are very experienced with foam in place, I do suggest, I know it's not the cheapest thing to do, but I highly, highly suggest you at least pour once first. Do it on a floor that you're not concerned about making a mess on. Just don't do it on carpet. And always have 2 people there with you, one to pour and one to help position the client and keep things from getting out of hand. The more you do this stuff, the easier it becomes, the better it'll start looking, the better you'll get at it. Foam in place is a very cool tool to use to fill in those gaps, though. So foam in place was the chosen solution for Bennett here. We just weren't able to accommodate his kyphosis is the big deal. You can see the shape that was created to help better distribute the load, given the support that he needs for decent posture, stability, things like that. He just had a spot we were getting all of the loading on and needed to spread that out. So it worked great for this little guy. Now, TFB Contour, it's the next style up that we'll talk about. This was originally designed in a response to some customers of ours that really wanted something for long-term care facilities. So TFB Contour here, it works well outside of that too. We get utilization everywhere, but just so you know, that's the original population that it was designed with them in mind. So it has a very similar profile in shape to that of our ADI back supports. There are some key differences when you start getting into like the deep and the extra deep. The top edge is always going to be this nice generic rounded profile, where ADI starts to get more and more scapular relief as you get taller. But TFB Contour, this is really ideal for those clients who need a consistent trunk support with more ergonomic contouring. but maybe not highly adjustable demands, right? TFB contour is really ideal for your client that maybe you find during your eval they need something predefined ergonomically, gives you good, immediate, and constant postural support. But it works best when you know that client's shape is fairly well understood, but also unlikely to change significantly in the near term, right? Somebody who's super consistent and things like that. So TFB contour is also available from 10 by 10 up to 22 by 24, 250 pounds just as the linear modification. But here we go above that with material upgrades, removal of some of the features, things like that. And we're able to hit up to a 36 wide at 600 pounds with some of those changes. So when we show it on our configurator and order form that it stops there, you just know we can get bigger if we needed to. Now, the effectiveness of this back or style of back support is really correlated pretty significantly to how it fits to that client shape. So that shape specifically is again modeled off of ADI. So as an active depth TFB contour, its top-down profile, the view if you were to look straight down from the top of this backrest, is the same as our ADI series. You have a flat center section with a 15-degree bend to help ease that transition and start the invitation more towards the midline. And then you have that final bend angle of another 30 degrees to really give you the lateral stability out of this back support. Now, it is a between the cane style back, so it's always in the neighborhood of about 2 3/4 less than what we say it is. So again, the part number is stated as what chair it fits, not necessarily the actual width of the back or trunk width or anything like that. So we have fitment references, the PDFs I show you, the links will be live so you can, or send you, those links will be live so you can click on that and go straight to that PDF fitment chart, and so you can actually look at real trunk widths and things like that again. So the effectiveness again is really tied to how it fits the client. And so with this active depth, you can add laterals to get a little bit more snug fitting system, a little more targeted stability, things like that. But we also sell this in a deep or an extra deep. So the deep shell here gives that client 4 inches of depth, and that extra depth is going to be an integrated contour, right? So that extra depth is meant to provide some degree of just generic lateral support. What you'll notice is this is bent to a 90 degree, so we get more aggressive generic positioning and support than say our ADI brand would. The ADI stuff is designed to allow somebody to shift and move and reach, while TFB is really meant to be supportive and hold and lock that person in its optimal position. Now, your last one is the extra deep. It's 6 inches of total depth. This is going to provide a little bit more of that generic lateral stability than the previous deep contour. With this, we add an extension to the deep contour. So neither this extra deep or the deep will support like the addition of thoracic lateral hardware. The back support itself is really designed to be that lateral support, to be that integrated generic support. So when you need something more targeted, it would lean you towards the active plus bolt-on laterals. So you can see here the side-by-side of the 3 options. You'll notice how everything is built into the shell. It's all under one single cover. But now what do we do if we need to put that generic, kind of see it here right in the center, what if we need to put that generic lateral support in a little bit of a different spot? Maybe it needs to be applied asymmetrically to that client's body. So we do have a solution for that. The active contour shell plus this adjustable contour extension would be that solution. So you can add on these extensions. They'll provide the same amount of support as the deep or extra deep shell would. And you can mount this straight to the shell, to the backrest in that slot that's already cut there. So that'll allow you to adjust them independently of each other. These are labeled as a left and right, but you can use them on either side depending on how you want to use them. So in the orientation shown here, they can be pushed pretty low to help position, say, the top of the pelvis. Or you can invert them and swap sides and have them sit really tall and use them more so like a thoracic lateral support. So these extensions do have some rotational adjustability built in. You have a hole here that's shaped more like a jelly bean, so that gives you a little bit of a rotational adjustability as well to help get more of a conforming fit. So keep in mind these are just contour extensions. They're specific to this contour modification. We don't do these kinds of things on like the TFB rectangle, for example. So this is just an example of them in use here. This is on an active contour back with our quote 6-inch extension on this thing. So this creates an overall contour that's 6 inches deep. You can see that lateral is a separate piece from the shell. In that second picture, you can kind of make out how there would be some adjustability here in that little jelly bean. I can come up and down more in this particular example as well. You can also bolt. I personally prefer to bolt it to the front face of the aluminum. It gives you a little bit more freedom of adjustability once you start getting to the extremes of the sides. As with the linear, TFB contour also supports that lumbar insert. Again, same thing, we ship it in a bag separately. We can also do foam in place on this one as well. So all of the same components from the linear series, everything like that, it's just applied to the contour here. So for these adjustable contour supports, we only offer them as a complete package. We can definitely look into just foam replacements and padding replacements, I should say, separately. Just right now, it's one single part number that's all inclusive. So we'll definitely look into that, make that an option in the near future. So the last modification here to talk about is going to be the TFB Flex modification. So this is our third style, if you want to call it that, of TFB. Our Flex modification, it creates a back support with an enlarged area of relief for several spinal postures, mainly targeting the kyphosis. You'll see this large spinal relief here on all of these. It's going to come with an active, a deep, or a modular style. So all of them are going to include some form of lateral support for positioning and additional contouring. And all three of these use a moldable piece inside of there for some additional accommodations. We'll talk about that though. So each of these comes with headrest mounting holes. You've got tool slots for mounting on the sides, ample adjustability, things like that. And you don't, but you don't get a seat to back hinge on this one. It would, in the end, it would cause some integrity issues with the back for us to put holes down there in the bottom of this shell. So this one's really ideal for your clients with fixed or more pronounced spinal curves who need that relief, that accommodation, and maybe something that you can adjust or have flexible accommodations for. So TFB Flex is most appropriate when, again, you need to account for that, maybe for a kyphosis, maybe some complex spinal curve. This is the style you would choose when that traditional foam build, the contour shell shape, things like that, can't really safely or comfortably match that client's anatomy. Now, variations here, we have 3 depths. First off, we have the Flex Modular. This is a relatively flat backrest, but we do bolt on some extensions that push it out to 2 inches of depth. These can be adjusted in height and to some extent in width, so you can get a little bit more customized support for each individual. You can add lateral thoracic supports to this in a couple of different ways to get a little bit more precise control. This one is available from a 10 by 10 up to 22 by 24, just like everything else. Our next ones up, though, are our active flex, or sorry, flex active. This is a flat center section with the same spinal relief, but we get a 45-degree bend there on the outer edge with 2.5 inches of overall depth. So this bend is meant to provide that lateral stability. The support travels from complete top to bottom if you wanted it. And there's some scapular and pelvic stability and reliefs there on the top and bottom edge. Our last one here is going to be, we take the active shell, we add an adjustable extension to that to get 6 inches of depth, and that becomes our TFB deep, or flex deep. Additional thoracic lateral support could be added if you needed targeted shaping, contouring, things like that. But because of the shape, overall, the active and the deep here, they're only available from 12 wide, 10 tall, and up. Once we shrink down past 12 and below, we run out of real estate for it to be the back that it is here. So with special considerations, we've taken the TFB Flex back up to about 30 wide and 385 pounds. Just like the contour, we have some fitment references and things like that, and I'll share all that after we wrap up. Just if you don't get those, or remember, those links that are going to be on this PDF that I share will be live as well. Now, each TFB Flex back is going to include a moldable thermoplastic rigidizer. I know that's a mouthful, but it's a plastic strip you insert or remove from the backrest. They allow us to have a variable, accommodation for spinal curves, anywhere from the thoracic region down into the lumbar region. These stabilizers are located inside of the zippered cover, behind the foam. They're placed in some little sleeves that are sewn into the cover. They do require you to pull that piece out, heat it up, and mold it to the shape you want, but it's pretty easily accomplished. The nice thing is they do move and bend and flex still, even with that new shape, so you do get some good suspension out of it as well as some support. Each one is 1 inch wide. Our back's less than or equal to 20 inches wide. Will come with 2 pieces. Both of them are about 1 inch off of the center line, and then anything over 20 gets 4, so you get 2 per side of the spine. So because of that very large hole in the back, we struggle to do a couple of things. We can't do a lumbar support insert. It's just not a suitable base for that to stay placed on. And then we're still we're not offering foam in place. It's very hard to control the foam in place with that large hole there. So those are the 2 modifications that we don't do here. Now, we have our back supports, all of our modifications that make it fit to the client. I want to quickly run you guys through hardware to make it fit to the chair real quick. I'll try to make it quick because I know we're hitting the end of our time limit here. So for linear hardware, we have J&L. It's pretty standard J&L stuff. We have our knob hardware, again, pretty standard knob hardware. And then we have our trouble-free bracket. So the trouble-free here, you would flip this little plastic piece open with your hand, and it would come right off of the chair. So all of these 3 are tool-free to remove from the chair. You can get them all in a 2-point or 4-point version. The 2-point package is going to include a seat-to-back hinge. 4-point would just be 4 of these pieces. So our seat-to-back hinge, again, all of your 2-point packages for linear and contour, for that matter, are going to include this. The hinge not only allows for adjusting the seat versus the back support, but and allowing for growth and things like that. But once you install it in the seat, the back support, they come out as one system. So that's kind of the benefit there. So families are able to break that thing down, move it in and out of the chair regularly, and a lot easier than if it's 2 pieces usually. We do have a pediatric sized appropriate one. So this image here is your adult version. Our pediatric one looks very, very similar, but scaled down. Our TFB Contour and Flex series, though, we have our Simple Solutions hardware family. So starting here on the fixed options, we have a hardware that's available in a 2 or 4 point as well as HD. So 2 point is simply two of either of these that you see here. 4 point includes a J&L for the lower half. And HD would be 4 pieces of what you see here. So seat to back hinge would be separate if you wanted it on contour. But these hardwares are unique in that they isolate the depth and the angle adjustments. Typically, when you make that adjustment, you loosen 2 screws and you need a set of hands to hold it all together. You need one to position everything. You need one to hold people in place, things like that. So it gets very, very complicated to just move it 1/8 of an inch or whatever. So here you can adjust depth and angle independent of each other. They don't affect each other. So it makes it a lot easier for a fitting or delivery. So basically the 2 screws here that sit a little bit proud of everything, you loosen those. You can adjust the overall angle of the hardware. There's 2 here that are kind of hidden away. You loosen those 2, and that's your depth, and angle stays fixed. Our Simple Solutions flip block hardware is the next one up. It's available on contour, on flex, and on linear stuff. So everything. Flip block is versatile, removable hardware, super easy to configure, to remove, to install. The name came from the lever that's on there. You flip the lever up to release it, flip it down to lock it. So flip lock. You've got 40 degrees of seat to back angle adjustability in this thing. Plenty of depth, plenty of width. So super simple operation, and the back can come right off that chair. On the ADI side, we do offer our legacy quick release hardware for I support flex and modular, so on everything now. It's a really lightweight hardware for what it does. It's removable. You've got a ton of adjustability. You just push that red lever up or release it, and then everything comes right out. We also have our Simple Solutions adapter. So if you're mounting to a power chair and don't necessarily need quick release every time, this works great. It works great with all of our TFB series. You can mount directly to the shear reduction plate on a Quantum, on a Permobile, or if you're willing to give yourself some holes on the chair, you can attach it to a Rovi or a Meritz without too much work as well. So with our TFB stuff, I will say the more contour you have to your back, the less depth you're going to eat with these. It's a pretty big weight loss compared to some other mounting methods, things like that. So this works very, very well, especially if you need to deal with things like a trunk rotation or something to that effect. But once you mount this, they are incredibly adjustable. You do lose some of that adjustability if you're stretching this out to fit an incredibly wide back support. But you can see here, since these are all Unilink systems, you can get pretty crazy if you really needed to. This guy right here, he's a super tiny little kid that we needed to eat up some depth on, and as he starts to grow deeper, we'll be able to pull that backwards before we ever have to mess with the position of that actual center spine on that chair. Last thing to get this mounted would be our direct mounting. So if you don't need a ton of adjustability, you need to maximize seat depth, you need it to be as light as possible, or you just don't want more parts on this chair than you need that could maybe fail down the road, we can remove all of that extra stuff and put directly into the shell. We can to mount directly onto the center spine of a Quantum TB3, a Permobile, or some Sunrise things. So this will just drop right onto those holes, and you don't need to sacrifice performance of the shear reduction on that chair if it's got power recline, things like that. So that is going to be it for me today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop that into the comments, into the chat, Q&A. Try to get it answered for you. Before or as I open the floors to question here, I will send a PDF copy of this presentation. It'll go to the email you used to register. That same email is going to have a link to CEC quiz. If you guys need CEC credit, Should be a very easy quiz. Don't stress about it. And then we'll make this recording available as soon as we can for on demand. Aside from that, I'm sorry I went over time here. I'm glad you guys stuck around though. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them out now. We'll get them answered. I'll stick around for a few minutes for those questions. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody joining us today. We'll have another webinar next month on our custom cushion, and we'll see you guys all there.